Hey everybody, and welcome back to BK's Bullets. I'm your host, Brent, and we're out here on the porch during these quarantine times reading DCeased. Yes, I did an overview of this book earlier when I got it. Finally got around to rereading it again. I had read it when it originally came out in singles, but I read it all together this one time here on my back porch, enjoying a nice St. Louis Cardinals koozie of, what is this, Coke Cherry Zero, which I do like the zeros, so give them a shot. Yeah, it's a little weird reading what is essentially a virus book in the middle of a pandemic. Right before I started this one this afternoon, I finished on my iPad reading Batman Legacy, which itself is a virus story, which is also a little weird. You hear the highway and the wind in the background, so we're outside hanging out. This was good. I like this. It was a strong start, but I think it kind of tempered off at the end here, and that was a bummer. Another weird thing is that they put this one shot in the middle of the book, which is DCeased, A Good Day to Die, and it basically tells of what happened on the first day in other places in the DC universe, not focused in the regular story. Like, you see Big Barda and Mr. Miracle here, along with John Constantine, Mr. Terrific, Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, Ted Kord's also there, and you kind of find out what's going on with them. So it's this weird little like interlude in the middle of the book, and then the interlude actually ends as events are happening at the end of the book when they say, spoiler, Superman discovers Barry Allen, blah blah blah, right? So it's a little weird, and because that doesn't really happen until this far into the book, 2 issues later or something like that. So what is DCeased? Well, basically, DCeased is when the anti-life equation is taken from Darkseid. Darkseid attacks Earth, kidnaps Cyborg. You got DCeased over here, and they put the anti-life equation into Cyborg, and they somehow corrupt it because they call the Black Racer right here, and he's like the manifestation of death. My phone is sliding here. Apologies. And so somehow the anti-life equation gets messed up to now it's basically a techno-organic virus that attacks people and basically turns them into undead zombies. They call them the anti-living in the book. And it spreads from there. It spreads through social media, it spreads through screens, it spreads through the internet, and it also spreads through blood. So it's like anything that can happen. The digital world is a crutch we currently live on right now in quarantine, and that is exactly what kills the DC universe here in this book. So it's a little fun. So the anti-life equation, if you're not familiar, is this thing that invented by Jack Kirby with the New Gods and the Fourth World back in the 70s when he created Darkseid and Orion and Mr. Miracle, Big Barda, all those guys. And basically, it's the thing that Darkseid is constantly seeking. Baxter, shut up. Stupid dog. And he's constantly seeking it because he believes that once he knows the equation, it's going to give him total control over the living in the entire universe, basically. So this is the thing that's going to turn him into the puppet master of all things, the creator of all things, God, etc., even though he's like an evil god. So somehow that's corrupted, it messes up with Darkseid, and then it goes haywire in the DC universe, only on Earth in this book. So you have people like Batman, Superman, Hal Jordan, The Flash, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Tempest, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, the Joker, Mara, Aquaman's wife. All of them kind of have some sort of infection here. That is weird. Why is this cover here? There's a weird like Andy Kubert cover in the middle of the book. I just kind of read through this, and now as I'm flipping through it, I'm like, why is this here? Oh, thank gosh I didn't tear my page. It's strange, but it does it's basically a zombie story, and if you know zombie stories, you really can't win in them. So that is kind of what happens, no spoilers, kind of in the book. It ends on a weird, hopeful note, And there is a sequel coming. They're currently, well, not currently because nothing's going on during the coronavirus, but there is a sequel to DCeased coming. They're currently publishing like a little mini-series about what happens on Earth after the end of this book, but the sequel takes place, like, lifts off from the end of this book, so you have to read it to know what I'm talking about, really. Baxter. So this is the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition. I talked about this in the overview. It's got a little cardstock cover of the Batman DCeased cover, so I think this is the way it appears in like comic shops and Amazon, but Barnes & Noble had the Superman cover, which I really like. I like both of these, but since this was the variant, I went for that one. Went to Barnes & Noble and picked it up, but it's cool that the regular cover's included in the cardstock. And then all the covers are in the back here. They did a bunch of variants, like there's Deathstroke one here, and then they did all these like movie poster style DCeased. This is like It from the movie, The Nun, which came out last year, the Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street, Final Destination is here, Curse of La Llorona this side. So it's a fun little book. I really liked it. I do think the ending is kind of weak, though, so maybe that was because they were planning a sequel. It feels a little weird, like I would have just ended it all together and then figured out how to end it, or do a sequel at a later date. But, with these comics, they want their evergreens, they want their franchises, they want sequels, just like the movies do sometimes. So who wrote DCeased? Well, it was written by one of my favorite authors, Tom Taylor, right here. He wrote the Injustice comic books, the digital firsts, and he's done a couple of other things, but this is his first, or second, really, big thing for DC, aside from the Injustice books, which at the time weren't really, high profile, I guess you would say. They were a hidden gem, basically, by the people who read them, knew how good it was. Brian Buccellato took over for a little while, and then Tom Taylor came back towards the end, and then he wrote all of the Injustice 2 digital comics as well. So he's the writer here, and then you have art mostly by Trevor Hairsine and Stefano Gaudiano. I think he's an inker mostly, because I remember him inking some stuff on Gotham Central and maybe some Walking Dead. It's definitely Trevor Hairsine's style. There is some fill-ins in the first issue, and then that little interlude has some pages from, oh crap, what's his name? The guy who did The Boys, Derek Robertson. And those pages look great, but most of that interlude is by an artist, and her name, it's right here, Laura Braga does most of that interlude, A Good Day to Die. And she's a pretty cool artist, but their styles do not intersect. So I don't know if they asked Derek Robertson to do the entire interlude and then he got behind or what, but it just feels like, they could have waited, I guess. I think it came out in the middle of the series, before the series wrapped up. But I don't know why they just didn't push it and let Derek Robertson do it, because he's so detailed. It's a beautiful art style. Laura Braga's not bad, but it's jarring to jump between the two. But the good thing is that the rest of the series is pretty much Trevor Hairsine all the way through, which is unusual, at least of the stuff that I've read from him. It seems like he's a really good artist, and then kind of jumps back. I was reading on my iPad, X-Men, what's it called? Deadly Genesis, and first issue is all Trevor Hairsine, and then the second issue through the 6th issues, an entirely different artist, and it's what happened? I don't know. It's the weird thing with artists. Sometimes they're dependable and reliable, and sometimes they're not, or maybe, sometimes something happens. Something in their lifestyle or life. You never know. That's the weird thing about critiquing these books when you read the art. It's all this stuff is disjointed for a reason, but none of it is presented in the forewords or the afterwards to explain here's what was going on with this artist. It's just here, and you're left wondering why did they present it this way? I have no idea. But that is my review of DCeased. I don't know if it's going to be an evergreen for DC the way that Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns is, but it's definitely a fun little tale. I think the only downside is you have to know, like most DC stuff, I feel like you have to know a lot about who all the characters are. You have to know who Damian is, and you have to know who John Kent is, you have to know Dr. Fate, Mr. Terrific, You know, and if you have a brief understanding of most of the other people in this book, I think you're okay. But if you don't know that Batman has a son and that Superman has a son now, John Kent, then you're going to be reading this book going like, who's this kid? You know, so there's a little stuff that's left out, and there's no like biography or anything because it's assuming that you're caught up, basically. And I feel like it does take place in the current DC universe post New 52, post Rebirth. Superman's got the trunks on, but he doesn't quite have his modern costume. Everybody else is pretty much in their classic costume from here. I mean, Huntress, I guess, is in a new costume, and Harley Quinn is definitely the New 52 Harley with the blonde hair and the highlights rather than the Harley Quinn outfit. So she's definitely post New 52. And then you have characters like Damian and John Kent who are, you know, pre-post New 52, kind of both at the same time. Oracle's here as Batgirl in her kind of Burnside suit right there. Oh, the zombies. Oops. So it takes place in the modern DC universe, I would say, just kind of as an offshoot from there. But I think it's worth checking out. If you like these books, if you need some weird pandemic reading, check this out. I would definitely recommend this over Batman Legacy, which I was reading. I read that in the 2 trades on digital on my iPad from Comixology, and that was terrible. Pretty fucking terrible. This was way better. So yeah, there's some weird virus stories to read during the coronavirus. Enjoy that. If I had to give this a rating, I'd give it 3.5 out of 5. Fun. Interested to see where this goes now that we know that there's a sequel coming. And I do like this hardcover. I really like the read here. Sitting outside was nice. Been up in the man cave most of the time working, so reading in a new location was fun and interesting. So that's it for you guys. Hope you're doing well out there, staying safe, staying inside, staying home, and somehow getting, you know, all the stress lifted off of you from your kids, your situation, whatever. Hope you guys are all doing well. So thank you. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you guys next time in the Funny Pages.